Water's good enough for poor folks. Alana, my daughter's future mother-in-law, said, laughing coarsely. I couldn't hide my discomfort at her vulgarity. Oh, could it be? Right after that, my daughter's sister-in-law-to-be, Raina, looked at me, her face turning pale. I just smiled slightly. I'm Sonia Rollins. Turning 54 this year. I divorced my ex-husband when our daughter, Krista, was 3. The reason for our divorce was irreconcilable differences. He wouldn't work and spent his days drinking. No matter what I said, he never changed. Naturally, our financial situation worsened. I didn't need a family like that, so I decided to divorce him. We divorced without any child support or alimony. Since then, it's been just Krista and me. I was a housewife until the divorce. When I had to raise Krista alone, I started working desperately. I couldn't leave young Krista alone at home, so I initially took on work-from-home jobs to make ends meet. Of course, life was tough. Working from morning till night, the pay was low, leading to constant saving. There were times, a day before payday, when I ran out of money and went without food. Despite the hardships, I managed to raise Krista into adulthood. With Krista becoming a working adult, I found myself with more free time and started dedicating more time to work. Leveraging my experience in simple tasks, I began creating handmade items. This eventually turned into a successful business. There's also been a change in my personal life. Krista got engaged. Not long after Krista started working at her company, she began dating a man named Nicholas. Nicholas is Krista's boss at work and is 5 years her senior. I've seen a photo of Nicholas that Krista showed me. He seemed like a fine young man. It appears Krista has learned from her father's bad example, as Nicholas gives off a serious impression. I'm delighted with the happiness Krista has found. Now, in the latter half of my life, I've decided to live as I please. That was my thought. Then, one day, Mom, I need to talk to you about something. Krista approached me after dinner. It was unusual for Krista to come to me hesitantly like this. While thinking this, I responded to Krista. What's the rush? You seem off. What's going on? Then Krista said to me, modestly, I'm going to marry Nicholas. Really? That's wonderful. Congratulations. Since I haven't actually met Nicholas, I don't know what kind of person he is. I hoped he would be just like the person in the photo. I'm glad you feel that way, Mom. I was worried you might oppose it. Krista seemed relieved that I didn't oppose her decision. Her face clearly showed relief. Then Krista made a suggestion. So, I was hoping you could meet Nicholas this weekend. It seems Krista wanted me to meet Nicholas before they got married. Considering how serious Krista is, she probably wanted to show me Nicholas's face to put me at ease. I nodded strongly towards Krista. All right. I'll meet Nicholas. I want to see what kind of person he is. Mom, Krista said, looking happy. And so, it was decided that Nicholas and I would meet. Sunday of the following weekend. I was waiting at home for Krista and him. It was just before 11 a.m. It wouldn't be long until Krista brought Nicholas over. Then, at that moment, the doorbell rang. Yes. When I opened the door, there stood Krista and Nicholas. Nice to meet you. I'm Nicholas Friedman, engaged to Krista. Nicholas said, greeting me. I felt a bit relieved by Nicholas's politeness. Krista is my precious only daughter. I'm glad her partner is a decent person. Please come in, I said, inviting Krista and Nicholas into the house. Nicholas still seemed like a fine young man after entering our home. He brought famous brand sweets as a gift. and he shared the story of how he and Krista met with a smile. "Nicholas, stop it. You're embarrassing me," Krista said, blushing, addressing Nicholas. Seeing Krista like this felt fresh to me. However, the warm atmosphere changed in the next moment. "By the way, is your father at work today?" Nicholas asked, looking around curiously. His expression was somewhat puzzled. I was taken aback by Nicholas's question. Glancing at Krista, she looked a bit pale. She probably hadn't told Nicholas about being raised by a single mother. Honestly, it was wrong of Krista to keep it a secret. In traditional households, single mothers often face prejudice. I braced myself to explain the situation to Nicholas. "Krista might not have mentioned it, but I'm divorced and a single mother." Nicholas's face, previously smiling, went blank for a moment. "What's wrong?" I asked Nicholas, feeling anxious. Maybe it wasn't good for me to have told him. That's what I thought. But in the next moment, Nicholas was already smiling. "It's nothing, please don't worry," he said, still smiling. "Is that so?" I said, tilting my head, puzzled. Despite being confused by Nicholas's change of expression, I didn't press further. After that, the marriage talks proceeded smoothly. Krista seemed to enjoy planning the wedding, asking, "What kind of dress should I choose? What color do you think is good for me, Mom?" With excitement. "Well, maybe a color you like?" I responded, but couldn't quite feel at ease. I couldn't forget Nicholas's expression from that moment. Nicholas's expression went blank. Perhaps his family has strict views on single parenthood. So, I asked Krista, "What did Nicholas say on the way back that day? About us being a single mother household?" Maybe Nicholas is facing opposition to marrying Krista from his parents. I asked, but Krista answered with a puzzled look. "He didn't say anything special?" "Mom, aren't you worrying too much?" Since Krista said that, I couldn't ask any more. However, my bad feeling proved right. It happened one night. "Mom." As soon as Krista returned, she called out my name. Her expression was quite dark, and I asked her in surprise, "Krista, why such a gloomy face? Did something happen?" Even though I asked, Krista remained silent. It was unusual for the optimistic Krista to look so troubled. After a while, Krista hesitantly began to speak. "Actually, it seems Nicholas's family isn't too pleased about our marriage," Krista said, looking sad. "Why?" "Because we're a single mother family. They think Nicholas will struggle because we're poor and from a single parent home." That's an awful thing to say. It would be very hard to hear such things from the in-laws. I asked Krista seriously, "Did Nicholas's mother say that?" Krista nodded silently. I was outraged by the turn of events. Just because we're a single mother family doesn't mean they should assume we're poor. We've had our struggles, but now we live a normal life. I work as hard as any man. And then Krista told me something unbelievable. Nicholas's sister also said some things. "Like what?" I asked Krista. "She said we're just after Nicholas's money. That it's impossible for them to accept us as family." Krista answered, looking disheartened. Her face looked incredibly lonely. Krista must have been deeply hurt by these direct comments. It's terrible that they would say such things about me without even meeting me. I can't believe Nicholas's parents. "What did Nicholas say at that time?" I asked Krista. And I remembered Nicholas's expression when he came to our house the other day. Maybe his expressionless face was because he imagined his family's reaction. It seems his family has quite a prejudice against single mothers. I started to worry about the future. Then Krista said, Nicholas defended me. After all, I work at the same company as Nicholas, so there's no way I'd ask for money. I felt relieved. If Nicholas is on your side, that's reassuring. I found myself saying that without thinking. If Nicholas had sided with his family instead of defending Krista, I would have been worried about her future. She would probably continue to face unpleasant remarks from his family. But if Nicholas is on her side, it felt somewhat better. A few days later, Krista suggested having a family meeting with Nicholas's family before the wedding. Mom, I want to have a family meeting with Nicholas's family before the wedding. I'm really sorry. According to Krista, it was Alana's suggestion. You should greet your fiance's parents at least once. Your mother has that much common sense, right? She was told. Nicholas and I couldn't exactly refuse. I'm really sorry, Krista said, apologizing and being considerate of me. For Krista's marriage introduction, we are meeting with his family. Honestly, I have no idea what they might say. I don't really want to go, but it seems right to follow through with the courtesy. It's okay, I responded with my agreement. Then, the day of the marriage introduction arrived. Krista and I went to a restaurant near his parents' house. The reason for a restaurant, as Krista told me, was because Alana had said, "We can't have you in our house when you're not married yet. There's a fine dining restaurant nearby, that will do, won't it?" The restaurant Alana chose charges $300 per person for a course meal. I go there occasionally for business, but hardly ever privately. I was puzzled by Alana's choice of restaurant. It seems Alana had also chosen a cafe near their house for Krista's first greeting to the family. Moreover, Krista ended up paying for Alana's meal as well. According to Alana, "It's only natural since you're becoming my son's wife." Apparently, Nicholas reimbursed the meal cost later. Why does Alana act so arrogantly, even though she's the one inviting us for the marriage greeting? I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. But if I, as Krista's mother, refuse now, Krista will surely be criticized for being rude. After getting married, Krista might end up feeling uncomfortable. So, reluctantly, I accepted the proposal. Then, I put on light makeup and headed to the designated place. I usually wear full makeup for work, but I thought it best to keep it understated today. My outfit was also much more modest than usual. A flashy outfit might give them the impression that I'm extravagant. Given that we're already being accused of being after Nicholas's money, a modest outfit seemed wise. With these thoughts, Krista and I entered the upscale restaurant and were led by the staff to a private room. Upon opening the door, Nicholas and his family were there. "Krista, Sonia, thank you for coming today." Nicholas greeted us politely. "Thank you as well for today." I also expressed my gratitude to Nicholas. Then I faced father-in-law Kevin, mother-in-law Lana, and sister-in-law Raina. His parents and Raina smirked unpleasantly and looked down on Krista and me. It was clear at a glance that we were not welcomed by his family. I greeted them with heightened wariness. "Thank you for giving us your precious time today. I'm Sonia, Krista's mother. It's a pleasure to meet you." Then Alana said with a nasty smile, "I'd rather not have any further association, you know." "Mom!" Nicholas admonished Alana, but she didn't seem to care. "Just being from a single-parent family is problematic enough. You must be struggling with money. Even your clothes are so plain." Alana scrutinized my outfit from top to bottom and said. Then she laughed mockingly. My attempt to dress modestly had backfired. Raina also hurled insults while laughing. "You could have married someone decent." Poor Nicholas, stuck with a poor mother and daughter. I was irritated by Raina's comment. Such remarks were too rude for a first meeting. But I couldn't disrupt Krista's marriage. "Excuse me." I reluctantly took my seat. Perhaps because I didn't retort. The in-laws looked at me as if they found me amusing. Krista looked at me with concern. Nicholas seemed a bit angry at his family's lack of manners. His brows were furrowed. Unaware of his demeanor, Alana was in high spirits. "Today, we've reserved a course meal. It's $300. Alana excitedly told Reina. "Really? I'm looking forward to it because the courses here are so expensive. We have to eat a lot." Reina was giddy with excitement. Kevin nodded happily as well. After a while, the staff brought the dishes. It was a colorful array of amuse-bouche. At this restaurant, 3 types of amuse-bouche are served on one plate. They all looked very delicious. But in front of me, there was only water. I was about to call the staff back, but they had already left the room. Only the water was left in front of me, a stark reminder. Nicholas looked at the scene, dumbfounded. Reina, knowing what was happening, laughed mockingly. Krista noticed it too and said with concern, "Mom." Then, in the next moment, Alana laughed nastily. "Poor people are fine with just water," Alana said, laughing crudely. I showed my discomfort at her vulgarity. "What does this mean?" I asked Alana. The in-laws had called us to this restaurant. Yet, they had no intention of hosting us properly. I was quite irritated inside. Alana glanced at me, then laughed as if she was pleased. Even though I was angry, she didn't seem to care. She seemed to enjoy it, actually. "Oh? Not only are you a poor single mother, but are you also stupid? Did you really think someone worthless like you would be welcomed?" Alana hurled insults at me. Kevin nodded as if it was to be expected. "Don't you feel ashamed to be a single parent? A woman who was left by her husband, you're full of flaws. A plain woman like you becomes unnecessary, right?" Kevin said, laughing crudely. It wasn't that my ex-husband left me, but Kevin's assumption was unilateral. I truly thought this was unbelievable as a human being. Reina also laughed joyfully. "I don't want to end up like Krista's mother. Working for low wages even though she's a woman. It's really pitiful without any feminine charm." While saying this, she looked down on me. "Mom, I'm sorry." Krista looked like she was about to cry. She must feel responsible for putting me in this difficult situation. Krista was looking down. I had reached my limit of patience. Being looked down upon like this, I couldn't stay quiet any longer. It might be time to fight back. At that moment, "Enough already! All of you ganging up on Krista's mother. Aren't you ashamed as adults?" Nicholas yelled loudly. I was surprised that Nicholas stood up for me. "Nicholas." Krista also looked surprised. Nicholas was red-faced and angry at his family. However, Alana and the others showed no remorse. Alana, still laughing joyfully, said, "There's no need to defend poor people. Why is Nicholas getting so angry?" Kevin nodded significantly. Nicholas's words seemed to have no effect on them. I could only be dumbfounded by his parents. They must lack common sense. It might be time for a counterattack. I had a last resort that would surprise the in-laws. At that moment, Reina started to look at my face. I ended up glaring at Reina. Then Reina muttered, "Oh, could it be?" Right after that, Reina looked at me and her face turned pale. It seems she finally realized who I really am. I let out a slight smile. Reina, looking at me, was trembling. "No way." Noticing her reaction, Kevin asked Reina with a puzzled look, What's wrong with you? You've been acting strange for a while. Alana also looked at Reina, surprised. You're as pale as a ghost. Are you feeling okay? Alana spoke to Reina with concern. Still, Reina's trembling didn't stop. Given the truth, Reina realized it's understandable. Then Reina asked Kevin. Dad, your company is Globe Crafts, right? Reina looked at Kevin, seeking confirmation. Globe Crafts is a small to medium-sized enterprise with about 100 employees. The salaries aren't comparable to those of major companies. And I am familiar with Globe Crafts. The reason I know it is because it's related to my work. Kevin said with a laugh. What's this all of a sudden? I might look like this, but I'm working hard as the sales manager. And Kevin continued. I used my connections to hire you as a part-time worker in our company, didn't I? Be grateful. Kevin said, laughing. That's right. Reina's face fell, looking resigned. Kevin asked Reina, puzzled. But why are you asking this? Are you trying to show off because this poor person is likely employed on a non-regular basis, and you work as a regular employee? Kevin looked down on me with a disdainful gaze. This man is about to face a dire situation. I vowed in my heart. Then Reina sighed lightly and began to speak. Dad, don't you know the company's clients? The company's clients? Kevin asked, puzzled. Alana looked stunned. Being a housewife, she didn't seem to understand much. Reina hesitantly explained. I've met Krista's mother before. Inside the company. She was wearing more makeup then, and I didn't recognize her right away. Kevin seemed confused. What do you mean inside the company? I'm sure I remember the faces of the employees, including part-timers, but there's no older woman like that? I frowned at being called an older woman. But it seems Kevin was too preoccupied to notice. Trying desperately to remember as he heard inside the company. However, I haven't spoken directly to Kevin, so it's understandable if he doesn't remember. As I thought this, Reina began to apologize. Krista's mother! I'm really sorry for what happened. Seeing Reina's behavior, the in-laws began to get agitated. Why apologize? There's no need to say sorry to such a poor person. Alana said. That's right. Don't you have any pride? Apologizing to a poor person like this. Kevin shouted at Reina. Reina glared sharply at her parents. Dad, Mom. Krista's mother is actually very wealthy. Much more than Dad could ever be. What did you say? Kevin glared at Reina. Being told such a thing by his own daughter must have been unexpected. Alana, too, reacted to Reina's statement with, How could you say that? Screaming almost hysterically. Reina said with a resigned attitude. Because Krista's mother is the president. I've served her tea in the company's reception room. You know Roland's Bags, right? Kevin froze upon hearing that name. Then he turned his neck to look at me. I deliberately smiled. Kevin's face turned pale. Roland's Bags. Isn't that the brand the president finally convinced for a collaboration that's supposed to happen? Then Alana screamed. Roland's Bags, that's the one with bags in department stores, right? Even my bag is from there. Alana said, looking over her bag multiple times. When we entered this restaurant's private room, I noticed a familiar bag. Alana was holding it carefully under her chair. It's a breach of manners in a high-end restaurant, but it must be her favorite bag. I told Alana with a smile. That's a magazine giveaway, isn't it? I'm honored that you're using my brand. Alana's face turned red. Then she looked down, embarrassed. She must feel ashamed that her bag was recognized as a magazine giveaway. I took out my business card from my card holder. I am Sonia Rollins, the representative of Rollins Bags. The in-laws scrutinized the business card carefully. To think you were actually the president! Kevin was trembling as he looked at the business card. Alana looked incredulous. I watched the two staring silently at the business card and said, "We were supposed to collaborate with Globe Crafts, but it seems like that collaboration won't be possible anymore. Such a shame." Hearing this, Kevin looked disturbed. Why? That collaboration is the most important project the president has been working on. If we cancel it, our company will, Kevin said, trembling with fear. What's going on? Alana asked Kevin, confused. The truth is, Globe Crafts is in a precarious financial situation. Compared to the past, fewer people are making handmade items. When I was young, my mother used to sew everything by hand. But now, cheap ready-made products are abundant, probably a sign of the times. Globe Crafts has been hit hard by this trend, with sales declining year by year. When Globe Crafts' president proposed the collaboration, he mentioned it was a strategy to turn around the company's dire situation. However, I have collaborated with many famous brands. So, honestly, I wasn't very interested in collaborating with a small to medium-sized enterprise like Globe Crafts. Initially, I declined the president's proposal, but eventually, I was persuaded by his enthusiasm and agreed. We decided to collaborate with Globe Crafts to make bags. But now, that's a thing of the past. Kevin was trembling. He must be terrified of what's to come. Ignoring Kevin, I quietly said, "The collaboration with Globe Crafts didn't seem to offer much benefit. I was just moved by the president's enthusiasm. But a company that looks down on Krista." I stared at Kevin with a cold gaze. Kevin was sweating under my stare. Then, in the next moment, he apologized to me. What? While Alana was confused by Kevin's apology, he desperately sought my forgiveness. Krista and Nicholas were also surprised by Kevin's apology. "I'm truly sorry." Kevin is apologizing, clearly not caring about how it looks. To me, Kevin's apology doesn't resonate at all. After all, an apology that comes only after he realizes my position is just to protect himself. There's no genuine remorse there. I spoke with a chillingly cold voice. An apology now? After you've looked down on Krista and me all this time. To think that an apology would suffice after all this. Kevin's mindset must be overly optimistic. Then, realizing that his apology wouldn't turn the situation around, Kevin quickly stood up. It was merely a performance after all. Alana, looking bewildered at me, said, "We're going to be family, so you'll forgive us, right?" She said that flippantly, looking at me. Then Alana continued, "I'm a big fan of Rollins Bags. Since we're family, I'll get some products for free, right?" Alana looked at me with hopeful eyes. I was so appalled that I couldn't say anything. "Mom, that's too convenient," Nicholas said, frowning and sternly admonishing her. Even for Alana, that comment was too far beyond the pale. But Alana, seemingly not understanding, said, "Why not? There must be plenty of stock, right? It wouldn't hurt to give away a few." Getting into a worse mood, Kevin and Raina looked at Alana with dismay. I told Alana, "Our products are not free to give away. After all, you are strangers to us." Alana looked frustrated at my words. "Krista and our Nicholas are getting married, right? So we are family. A family should provide financial support. You're the president after all. Alana said this with a straight face. After all the disdainful poor-calling, this was her attitude. She clearly had no remorse. Nicholas finally lost his patience with Alana's attitude. Mom, you change your attitude just because you found out Krista's mom is the president? Aren't you ashamed? Nicholas, his face red, reproached Alana. But Alana, unfazed, laughed it off. It doesn't matter. A president must have more money than they know what to do with, right? Share a little with us. I quietly told Alana. Even if Krista and Nicholas get married, I have no intention of forming any ties with you. Alana, surprised, tried to cozy up to me. Don't say that. Once Nicholas gets married, we'll be family anyway, so giving away a bag or two. Alana was infuriating. As I was about to retort, Nicholas stepped between Alana and me. Nicholas. When I asked, Nicholas looked troubled. I knew Sonia was the president. And I kept silent, knowing my parents would bother Sonia if they found out. Kevin looked regretful at Nicholas's confession. You knew? If you had told me, I would have. If you had known, you'd act just like Mom, right? Nicholas looked at Kevin with a cold gaze. How dare you speak to your parents like that? Keep this up, and you're disowned. Kevin shouted at Nicholas. Krista was puzzled by their exchange. Nicholas sighed and declared, I'm fine with being disowned. I'll sever ties with you all. Why would you say such a thing? After all we've done to raise you. Alana, shaken, spoke to Nicholas. Kevin and Raina, stunned, stared at Nicholas. They hadn't expected him to say he'd cut ties. I want to cherish Krista going forward. I don't need a family that disregards Krista and Sonia. Nicholas! Alana collapsed in tears. Kevin and Raina stood there, dumbfounded. Being disowned by their beloved son must be incredibly hard. But that's solely the responsibility of Alana and the rest of the in-laws. Live with your regrets. I'm sure you'll struggle in the future, I said, smiling lightly. Then Krista joined in with my statement. We won't even tell you if we have children. She said this directly to her in-laws. Not being able to see the grandchild. Please, spare us that. Alana cried out in agony. Amidst this, Nicholas murmured, We're done being a family. At his words, Kevin and Raina tried to cling to us with faces about to cry. Ignoring such in-laws, Krista, Nicholas, and I left the restaurant. Afterward, I heard Kevin and Raina were fired from the company. The day after the incident at the restaurant, I told the president of Globecrafts that I wanted to cancel the collaboration. The president tried to persuade me several times, but I refused. I cannot collaborate with a company that harbors individuals capable of such disdain. While I sympathized with the president's desire to save his company, I couldn't support a company that employed Kevin and his ilk. I explained the situation to the president. Then the president became furious. Apparently, the president has a daughter about Krista's age and couldn't forgive Kevin and Raina's actions. The collaboration with me was crucial for Globecrafts. Kevin and Raina had ruined such an important collaboration. It's understandable that the president couldn't forgive them. Kevin was already of age, and Raina was employed part-time through Kevin's connections. After being fired from Globecrafts, finding a new job would be very tough for them. And Alana was a housewife. She had already been cut off by Nicholas, their only breadwinner. Once, the in-laws came directly to our company to negotiate. Please collaborate with Globecrafts. If you do, the president will rehire me. Even if not a collaboration, provide financial support. Our family is suffering, you know? Families help each other out. They both pleaded desperately. After treating people like poor people and now suddenly claiming family, it's laughable. I made it clear. Neither collaboration nor financial support is possible. Nicholas has also severed ties with you, hasn't he? Please leave now. But the in-laws wouldn't leave. But trying somehow to cling to me. I firmly told the in-laws again. Never appear in front of me again. If I see you again, I'll call the police. Perhaps because I mentioned the police, Kevin said. Please, not the police. We won't come again. And left with Alana. The in-laws' clothes were dirty. They probably weren't living well. They who had once scorned others as poor. It's purely their own fault. Apparently, Reina has since lived almost entirely shut in. Struggling to find a job and unlikely to marry. Despairing about the future, Reina barely leaves her room. Her future seems to hold nothing but despair. 3 years have passed since then. Now, Krista, Nicholas, and I live together. Ideally, as newlyweds, Krista and Nicholas should live alone. But Nicholas said, I think it's safer for Krista if she's with you in case of anything. And they decided to live with me. Nicholas, busy with work, often helps with household chores alongside Krista. I'm truly grateful. And a significant change has occurred for the three of us. One day, Krista approached me with a serious look. Mom. Worried something might have happened to Krista, I became anxious. Then, in the next moment, she smiled. It looks like I'm going to be a mom. Krista joyfully stroked her belly. That's wonderful, Krista. Congratulations. Delighted, I hugged Krista. Nicholas smiled happily beside Krista and me. I'm sure various things will happen from now on. But if it's us, we can surely overcome them. I'm also looking forward to meeting the new grandchild. Imagining our happy future, a natural smile spread across my face. Mom, it's terrible. We have to run away now or we'll be killed. What? What happened? When I asked for the reason, my daughter Kayla played me a recording from her smartphone. My wife and daughter will be killed. No, I mean, they're gone, so I'll pay back the insurance money right away. What came out of Kayla's smartphone was the voice of my husband, Daniel. Me and Kayla, gone? Could it be a prank by the two of them? No, wait, that's not it. Kayla looks too disturbed. This means Kayla accidentally heard Daniel starting to say he would take our lives. And he said he'd pay back right away, so he must be in debt. His irresponsible nature hasn't changed. I've known Daniel for over 20 years since we met in college. I've helped him out many times and always believed in him. But it was all just my one-sided affection. Otherwise, the thought of taking a life for money would never occur. I will never forgive such a man. My name is Melissa Williams. I'm a 42-year-old working housewife, employed at a travel agency. I met Daniel, who's the same age as me, during college in a camping club. That's why we still talk about this kind of stuff. Let's go camping sometime soon. What about work? I work for a camping gear manufacturer. Going camping is part of my job. Oh, right. What about you, Kayla? I smiled and looked back at Kayla. My high school daughter, Kayla, is recently obsessed with social media. Even now, she's fully engrossed in her smartphone. But Kayla is making an okay sign with her left hand. I got pregnant with Kayla when I was 25, which led to my marriage with Daniel. So, Kayla is a crucial part of our bond. The happiness we have now is all thanks to Kayla. I don't say it out loud, but I always think so. After all, Daniel and I started dating when we were college students. We hit it off in the same camping club, which led to our relationship. Daniel, as a boyfriend, was almost perfect. Being outdoorsy, he had a good physique and was reliable. His sense of fashion was also great. Most of all, I liked how kind he was to me and that he was a good listener. However, as a marriage partner, there was something that bothered me. That was his sense of money. Back then, Daniel often asked me this. "Melissa, could you come over and cook?" Could it be? When I asked, Daniel put his hands together. Then he would plead. "Sorry, I'm broke. I have nothing to eat until my part-time job paycheck comes in." Figures. Daniel being broke was a usual occurrence, so being asked like this was common. "Please, just until I get my paycheck next week. Make meals until then. I guess I have no choice." "Is that okay?" To Daniel's question, I nodded slightly. In fact, Daniel has no parents. He lost them in a fire at his house when he was in middle school. I wonder if Daniel doesn't get any money from home? I've thought this more than once or twice. But it's private, so I couldn't easily ask. Afterward, I bought groceries at the supermarket and visited Daniel's room. "I've been waiting, Melissa. Come on in." Guided by Daniel, I entered the room. Then, instantly, something caught my eye. "What's this?" This? Cool, right? I bought it," Daniel said proudly. At his feet, there were camping cooking equipment, a sleeping bag, and a tent still in its box, all scattered around. "You bought all of this?" "I spent all of last month's part-time job earnings on it." "You're kidding, right? You said you bought stuff last time too." In my surprise, I ended up speaking in a stern tone. Then Daniel suddenly looked angry. "What, you have complaints?" "No complaints, but this is clearly a waste. This is why you're always broke," I told him straight. But Daniel coldly said, "It's my money, I can spend it how I want." "But camping is my hobby. Don't interfere with this," Daniel yelled at me. It's always like this with Daniel. He spends recklessly and then eventually says he has no money. Then, he asks for help from me and others. Sometimes he even borrows money from me or others. Will this continue forever? Because of these worries, I couldn't consider Daniel as a marriage partner. As time went on, we graduated from college. I landed a job at a travel agency, and Daniel got a job at a camping gear manufacturer. However, with graduation and employment as turning points, I was considering breaking up with Daniel. Continuing the relationship as it was, marriage seemed difficult. It would be better for both of us to clearly part ways. That's what I thought, but as soon as he started working, Daniel changed completely. He worked seriously and didn't waste money at all. He didn't go out drinking with colleagues, nor did he wander around. "We have to save for marriage, right?" "Are you really going to save? And not go into debt like before?" "Of course not. I promise." I was moved by Daniel's words. He was different from the irresponsible Daniel of our student days. Maybe marrying him wouldn't be so bad. I continued dating Daniel. Eventually, at the age of 25, I got pregnant with Kayla. We finally became husband and wife. In the early days of our marriage, Daniel helped with child-rearing and household chores. So, I truly thought he was a good father. But that life didn't last long. Soon after giving birth, I returned to work. When we started leaving Kayla at a childcare center, Daniel's attitude changed significantly. "Daniel, help me clean the room." "No way. I have to go out." "Can't you help a little?" You hardly ever help with the chores anymore. I handed the vacuum cleaner to Daniel. But Daniel didn't take it. Instead, he turned away and said, "Housework and child-rearing are the wife's job. You do it." What's that supposed to mean? You used to help. I couldn't help but yell. Then Daniel frowned and muttered, "That was because Kayla was little. Now, it doesn't take that much effort, and you can manage on your own." That's not true. Enough. I have things to do now. With that, Daniel left on his own. What's with him, really? Most men push housework onto their wives. I understood that well. But being in that position myself made the words weigh differently. At least he's still working. Maybe that's good enough. I muttered as I started cleaning. I threw away the insurance flyers Daniel had been looking at into the trash. He even left someone's business card out. He's really messy. I didn't want to be blamed if Daniel lost that business card. So, I took a photo of the business card with my smartphone before placing it on the table. As I continued cleaning, I suddenly realized something odd. Wait. Where's my jewelry? My favorite piece of jewelry was missing. Did I leave it somewhere? No, I'm sure I put it in its case. I searched the room while cleaning, but it was nowhere to be found. Hours went by, and when Daniel came home in the evening, I asked him, "Daniel, have you seen my jewelry?" I don't know." "You didn't sell it, did you?" Daniel looked flustered when I asked, but he quickly denied it. "Of course not." Yeah, right. The possibility of Daniel having sold it existed, but there was no proof. Despite my suspicions, I couldn't press him any further. Despite such misunderstandings and small troubles, we were living happily. Over time, Kayla grew up and became a high school student. With less to worry about, I focused on my job. I was leading a fulfilling life. Then one day, Daniel, who had returned from work, asked me, "Melissa, are you insured?" "I am insured, yes." "Good, then." I felt uneasy about Daniel's odd behavior. When I sat in front of Daniel, he handed me a pamphlet. He started talking fluently as he showed it to me. "A housing complex is being built in the next town." "A housing complex?" "A place with built houses for sale. Houses all lined up and—" Daniel showed me photos on his smartphone. I see, I thought. Then Daniel said something unexpected. "I actually want to buy a new house there. That's why I asked about the insurance." When buying a house and taking out a loan, it's common to join a group credit life insurance. That's all he was asking about, Daniel said. "Buying a house? Are you sure it's okay?" "Of course. It might trouble you, but it's no trouble at all. I'll work hard too, so let's buy one." I thought owning a home was a dream far beyond reach. But it was becoming a reality. I was overjoyed, feeling like I was on top of the world. After some time, on a particular Sunday, we, as a family of 3, headed to sign the contract. It was about a 30-minute drive from our current condominium. Upon arrival, among the lined-up built homes, there was a prefab office. "Nice to meet you, I'm Jason Garcia, your agent." Perhaps because Daniel had talked to him beforehand, the home builder agent, Jason, quickly appeared. We were shown around the model house under Jason's guidance. While we were each looking around the house, Kayla came running from somewhere. "Mom, come here." Kayla forcefully took me to the prefab office. Once inside, Kayla closed the door. "What's wrong, Kayla?" "Mom, it's terrible. We have to run away now or we'll be killed." "What? What happened?" When I asked for the reason, Kayla played me a recording from her smartphone.
My wife and daughter will be killed. No, I mean, they're gone, so I'll pay back the insurance money right away. It's okay, I'll pay it right away.
The voice coming from Kayla's smartphone was Daniel's. Moreover, he sounded terribly panicked. Me and Kayla, gone? Before that, he almost said kill. Could it be a prank by the two of them? No, wait, that's not it. Kayla looks too disturbed. This means Kayla accidentally heard Daniel starting to say he would take our lives. And he said he'd pay back right away, so he must be in debt. His irresponsible nature hasn't changed. I've known Daniel for over 20 years since we met in college. I've helped him out many times and always believed in him. I thought we had been supporting each other since we got married. But it was all just my one-sided affection. Otherwise, the thought of taking a life for money would never occur. That man. I'll never forgive him. Confused still, I asked Kayla.
Kayla, how did you get this?
Dad was talking on the phone outside, so we wouldn't hear, said Kayla, with a pale face, trembling. I hugged Kayla.
Dad almost said kill. That means to kill, right?
It's okay, Kayla. I'll take care of it. Right then, the entrance door suddenly opened. Kayla and I were startled. Sorry. I was in a hurry. It was Jason who entered. Peering outside, Jason locked the office door. Then he whispered to us.
Escape now without Daniel finding you. He was talking about something terrible.
Something terrible?
Yes, about you too.
The agent struggled to find words. It seemed he heard the same thing as Kayla. Well, my daughter heard that conversation too. When I mentioned this, Jason looked shocked.
Then, it's clear. Daniel is being held back by my colleague, so leave through the back now.
Okay. I really want to confront Daniel now. But Kayla is too frightened. I can't leave Kayla alone and go to Daniel. Let's go to my parents' house for now. Exiting through the back, Kayla and I jumped into a taxi. We headed to my parents' house. Arriving at my parents' house in about an hour, I briefly explained the situation and left Kayla with them. Then I headed to a nearby law firm. On the way, my smartphone rang. It was Daniel. I hesitated but answered the phone. Hello? Melissa? Where are you? I was worried, you suddenly disappeared. Is Kayla with you? Yes. Kayla is with me, so don't worry. Hearing this, I could hear Daniel sigh. I was worried. What happened all of a sudden?
Actually,
I lied that my father, Brian, had collapsed. I thought that would serve as an excuse for suddenly disappearing. Daniel seemed to believe that. But he continued. So, when are you coming back? I have things to plan over here. It sounded like he had plans to take our lives. Sorry, it might take a while. What do you mean by that? Are you going to leave me hanging? Daniel suddenly yelled, clearly irritated. That confirmed my suspicions that his words were serious.
sorry, but I don't plan to come back.
What? You don't help with housework, and you raise your voice when you get angry like earlier. I hate that. I stated plainly. Daniel lost his words for a moment. But he quickly retorted. I shouldn't have yelled. It was bad timing when Brian collapsed and you were feeling insecure. It's too late to apologize now. Let's take this chance to put some distance between us. Bringing up divorce might make him suspicious, so I reluctantly said that. Then Daniel became visibly upset. You're hiding something, aren't you? We were just talking about buying a house.
Yes, but
It's an affair, isn't it? You got a call from your lover and suddenly want a divorce from me.
Daniel's roar echoed. Being accused of such awful things, I completely shrank back. After Daniel vented his complaints, I quietly announced,
That's another thing I hate.
I'll consider divorce and consult a lawyer.
Wait a minute. What about buying a house? I don't care. Don't contact me for a while.
I ended the call unilaterally. Immediately, I started to tremble. This was the first time I felt fear towards Daniel. Even in arguments, I had never felt this much fear. This won't do. I have to leave. I resolved to get a divorce. Afterwards, I informed my company I would be taking some time off. Then I consulted a lawyer about the divorce. I also decided to submit the recording to the police and have them investigate Daniel's debts. While discussing, I remembered something. Speaking of which, that business card. A business card I found while cleaning a little while ago. Thinking back, the company name was Finance. Clearly a financial-related business card, but not a well-known consumer finance company.
Could it be a malicious lender?
Feeling uneasy, I showed it to the lawyer. Sure enough, it was suspected to be from a malicious lender. In essence, here's the situation. Daniel borrowed money from some malicious lender. Unable to repay, he was pressed for payment. That's why he aimed for our insurance money. After having the lawyer delve deeper, it became clear that Daniel had debts from various sources. Not just consumer finance companies, but also colleagues and malicious lenders. The cause was gambling. Unbeknownst to me, Daniel had apparently been addicted to gambling since our college days. All I could do was sigh. However, I couldn't just leave things as they were. I have to divorce him before it affects Kayla. I resolved to tell him it's over. It's been a week since I fled from Daniel. He hasn't contacted me, but I never know when he might show up. I need to find out what Daniel is up to. I called Daniel's company, but not to speak to Daniel. I had asked for Kent Martinez, a male colleague of Daniel's. Kent Martinez speaking, who is this? Kent asked with a puzzled voice. I decided to introduce myself boldly.
I'm Melissa, Daniel Williams's wife.
Oh, Daniel's wife. Yes, Daniel is here. I'll transfer you.
Please wait. Don't transfer me to Daniel.
I blurted out loudly. Kent fell silent for a moment. Then he hesitantly said, Is there something wrong? I explained the situation to Kent. I was confident Kent would believe me. Because Kent too had lent a large sum of money to Daniel. Moreover, Daniel hadn't paid him back, or so he had told his subordinate. I had heard about it from the lawyer. And that's the situation.
Really? Daniel did something that serious?
Kent sounded incredulous. But I confirmed it was true. Then, I made a request of Kent.
Could you please keep an eye on Daniel for me?
Me? Watch Daniel? Yes, just contact me if anything happens. I pleaded earnestly. Kent seemed hesitant at first, but, influenced by my earnestness, agreed to my request in the end. All right, I'll do it. I thanked him once more before ending the call. Now I have to be clear with Daniel. My anxiety grew. What if Daniel became enraged? How could I protect Kayla if Daniel attempted to harm us? These thoughts raced through my mind. Yet, I was doing everything I could. I had consulted the police through the lawyer. And now I had an ally in Kent who would watch Daniel. It'll be okay. I'll make sure of it. I took a deep breath to calm myself. Several hours later,
As the day turned to evening, Daniel called. "Melissa, have you calmed down? Come back. I'm waiting for you," Daniel said in a gentle voice. But something lurking behind his kindness troubled me. Was it sincere? Or was he trying to lure me back to kill us? Bad thoughts flooded my mind, leaving me unable to respond. Amidst the prolonged silence, Daniel, unable to bear it any longer, shouted, "Enough with your selfishness. I'm tired from work and housework." "That's because..." "Don't mess with me. How dare you take advantage of my kindness?" Startled by Daniel's shouting, I realized it was hopeless with him. In that moment, my thoughts spilled out as words. "We're getting a divorce. If you're going to divorce me over some trivial reason, you'll have to pay compensation," Daniel yelled at me. Instinctively, I retorted, "It's not trivial. It's because of the gambling debts you've accumulated. That's why I'm divorcing you." Daniel fell silent at those words. Perhaps because it was true, he had nothing to say. Taking a deep breath, I continued. "You have gambling debts, don't you, Daniel? Tell me the truth." That's not it." "What's not it?" "You promised you wouldn't get into debt, remember? A verbal promise before we got married." Daniel seemed to recall it too, and said no more. "I'm divorcing you because you broke your promise. You'll hear from my lawyer, so sign the divorce papers." "All right, but I won't pay any compensation. It's not about cheating or anything." "I'm not expecting any compensation because of the debt. Just stay out of our lives from now on. I'll change everything, the beneficiary of the insurance, and make sure we have nothing to do with each other." I said this and hung up without waiting for Daniel's response. It was over. I sighed deeply, still holding my smartphone. But the next day, everything changed. After dinner, as I was relaxing with Kayla, my smartphone rang unexpectedly.
An unknown number. I wonder who it is.
I answered the phone, puzzled, and heard an unfamiliar man's voice from the other end. "Hello. Is this Melissa Williams? I'm Officer Andrew Miller with the police." "Police?" The officer explained that, because I had consulted the police about Daniel, they had increased patrols in the area. And just a short while ago, they had apprehended a suspicious man in front of my parents' house. Moreover, the man was carrying gasoline, intending to set my house on fire. And we extinguished the fire right away. However, the person claims to be your husband." "My husband? Daniel?" The police were holding Daniel, the suspicious man. I couldn't hide my shock. "So, we rang the doorbell, but it seems you were out, so we contacted you by phone. Where are you now?"
I'm currently staying at a hotel with my family. Actually, I had heard some information.
I explained the situation to the officer. The story goes back a few hours, when I was preparing dinner at my parents' house. I received a call from Kent on my smartphone. "Melissa, you and your family should get away immediately."
What happened?
Daniel had brought a portable gasoline can used for camping. He said it was for work, but when I secretly checked, it was filled with gasoline. He might be planning to set the house on fire. That's what Kent said. So, I took Kayla and my parents and evacuated to a nearby hotel. At the same time, I had informed both the lawyer and the police about the situation. And while telling this story, I headed to the scene. Upon arriving in front of my parents' house, there were many police officers present. Moreover, Daniel was being restrained. "Melissa, explain this to me." Daniel's voice was almost a shout. But I ignored him and approached the police officer named Andrew who had called me. "Is this your husband for sure?" "Yes, but there's no mistake that he's also a criminal." As I said that, Daniel shouted, "Stop it! It's a misunderstanding. Tell them." "Why should I?" "Why? Because it's obvious. Why would I hurt my own wife and daughter?" Daniel said this without a hint of remorse. In that moment, unable to contain my anger, I played the recording. Upon hearing it, Daniel collapsed to the ground. "You wanted the insurance money, right? Well, you won't be getting any. Reflect on your actions behind bars." "Wait, please." "Shut up. Now you'll live in fear." Daniel looked puzzled at my words. I decided to explain further. "You wanted to pay back the people who lent you money for your debts with our family's insurance money, right? I'm sure they'll come to collect even if you're behind bars." "No way. No." Daniel began to struggle. Soon, police officers restrained him and took him away. Later, Daniel was charged with arson among other crimes and received a guilty verdict. He is appealing, so the verdict is not yet final. According to my lawyer, the malicious lenders who were demanding repayment from Daniel backed off, likely wanting to avoid police involvement after his arrest. Also, the amount Daniel had borrowed turned out to be less than expected. Either way, we were assured we would not be harmed. The lawyer made that clear. By the way, Daniel and I divorced shortly after his arrest. While I can't expect any compensation, the risk of Daniel trying to take my life is gone. Thanks to that, Kayla and I can live in peace. I also thanked Kent later for his help. It turns out Kent is single and likes outdoor activities, and we got a bit closer. We have a good relationship now. Maybe it could become something more once Kayla is independent. But that's a story for later. After all, the happiness we have now is all thanks to Kayla. I'm thinking of expressing my gratitude to Kayla for the first time. Go get your welfare from TANF, you poor thing. With those words, the two of them left the house. I felt drained and just sat down right there. I remembered what my husband Mike had said earlier. "You are definitely independent, but I've always felt like my pride as a man was being hurt. I want to build a future with your sister Nancy now. So, I want a divorce." It all seemed meaningless, and I signed the divorce papers to express my intention to divorce. Sometime later, I had a meeting with both of them, with a lawyer present, to discuss the compensation I demanded. Shamelessly, my sister Nancy, who was not involved, demanded a share of the assets. But then, the lawyer burst out laughing. "Isn't TANF for you?" he said. "What?" Taken aback by the sudden turn of events, she was also surprised and exclaimed. Immediately after, seeing the documents the lawyer had placed on the table, Nancy turned pale. "My name is Sally. Mike and I have been married for 18 years. I am 45 years old, and he is 3 years younger, at 42. We have one daughter, Lisa, who is currently 17 years old and in the 10th grade. She is approaching an important period with her exams next year. We met through work. I worked at a real estate company, and Mike worked at a related company. We hit it off over something minor and started going out in our private time. He is very sensitive and often struggles to make decisions. Back then, I found his indecisiveness cute and was attracted to him. I wanted to take care of him, purely out of affection. That was also because I have a much younger brother. At first, I saw him as a brother and took care of him, but gradually, I was drawn to his more masculine aspects. That led to serious dating and eventually marriage. Mike was always indecisive, but he was the one who confessed and proposed to me. In those moments that required a decision, he always stepped up. That's why I felt I could marry him and be okay. And we did, going on to have Lisa and never experiencing a serious fight or a crisis of divorce. Once Lisa grew up, I thought we would start our second life as a couple. That's what I had believed.
Sally, can I just stay here for a bit?
My sister Nancy said this as she showed up unannounced with a huge suitcase. I have a brother and a sister. The woman standing in front of me was my sister, Nancy. Perhaps because of the age difference, I got along well with my brother. But I've always had a difficult relationship with her, who is a year older. Being shorter than Nancy, I always ended up with her hand-me-downs. Feeling sorry for me, when my parents bought me a new toy.
I want one too. Give me yours,
Nancy would say, taking the new doll I received and giving me her old, worn-out doll in return. Her bullying didn't stop there. Taking things was the lesser evil. Once we were in elementary school, she took all my friends, and when I got my first boyfriend in high school, she seduced him away from me. I hated her so much that I chose a different college just to avoid her, but she still interfered, ruining what should have been a fun college life. I still hate her to this day. I'd prefer not to have anything to do with her. So, I studied hard, got my real estate certification, and lived a life where I wouldn't have to see Nancy. Mike and I decided to have a small wedding, just the two of us, a photo wedding. My parents knew Nancy's character, so they kept my marriage a secret, yet here she was. I had hoped that once Lisa went to college, Mike and I would finally have some time for ourselves.
Sally, you live in such a nice house. Is it a single-family home? Did you buy it?
Oh, there's a room available here. I'll use this one. Nancy's irritating voice brought me back to reality.
Hey, this is a problem. What do you mean by showing up unannounced? My husband and daughter live here too. You can't just move in.
Ignoring my words, she began to inspect the house. Today was a holiday, but Lisa was out for a course. And Mike had been out since the morning for work.
Could you please leave before they come back?
I pleaded multiple times, but she wouldn't listen. And finally, in the evening, the two of them came home.
Who is this?
To Mike, who looked puzzled, Nancy greeted him with a charm that belied her 46 years.
Nice to meet you, I'm Nancy. Sally's sister. When did you get married without telling me? I had no idea because there was no greeting or report. I was just bored and went to visit our childhood home and found your wedding photo in Mom's room by accident. It's terrible, isn't it? Even though we're sisters.
Mike knew I had a sister. So, perhaps realizing she was exactly as he had heard, he looked a bit troubled. But I didn't miss it. Mike, looking enchanted by the beautiful Nancy. And Lisa, too, had a confused look on her face when she came home. No wonder. An aunt she had never met suddenly showed up at our house. But she pushed forward with the idea of moving in.
Actually, I was fired from my job, and it's been hard to come up with rent and living expenses, so I was wondering if I could stay for a little while. Maybe it's okay for a little bit? Eh? But no!
Lisa is facing an important time with her exams next year. I tried to say this, but the two of them didn't listen to my words and got excited on their own.
Actually, I had heard about you from Sally.
Oh, that's fine. You were probably just going along with Sally avoiding me, right? Sorry for being such a sister. From here, a tumultuous daily life begins. Nancy doesn't do any housework but keeps asking for money, and eventually starts taking cash from my wallet. This happened within just 1 week of she moving in to live with us. I've warned her about this several times, but she wouldn't listen.
Hey,
If you want money, at least tell me what you're buying or why you need it. Don't just take it from my wallet. Why do I have to report to you what I'm buying? Because it's my money. I wish she would start job hunting and move out soon since she was fired. But it doesn't seem like she's looking for a job, and lately, Mike and Nancy seem to have the same times of absence. Mike said he was working overtime, but there was never any overtime pay included in his salary. When I complained about it, the salary isn't supposed to include overtime, is it? You have to get paid for the overtime separately. If you can't say it, shall I say it for you? Huh? Are you doubting me? The overtime is paid separately, so there's no problem. Mike, who was usually gentle and rarely raised his voice, shouted. This was a shock in itself, because he was not someone who would argue emotionally or suddenly start yelling. From this point on, I started to feel a crisis in our current life. As usual, Nancy only lazed around at home, costing more money than what we spend on our daughter Lisa, which only made me sigh. I consulted my parents about this. They apologized for their lack of oversight, which led Nancy to find out about my marriage and our current home. But the fault wasn't with my parents. I had moved away from my dear parents to live quietly with Mike and Lisa, yet Nancy clung to me, even going so far as to find out where we lived. She must have been preparing to find out where we lived the moment she found the wedding photo of Mike and me. Surely, she must be planning to take something from me again and make me unhappy. I've even started to doubt whether she was really fired from her job. Maybe she quit her job on purpose to freeload off me and ruin my life. That's what it's starting to feel like. If that's the case, I need to kick her out of the house as soon as possible. You say you were fired, but can't you get unemployment benefits? Well, I've always been part-time, so I'm really struggling. I could have gone back to my parents, but I can't expect my elderly parents to take care of me, right? So, as the independent Sally, it's your responsibility as a sister. That's just common sense. Faced with such nonsensical remarks, I was at a loss for words. Nancy, after dropping out of college, has been working part-time ever since and has never worked as a full-time employee. After being confronted with the fact, I realized job hunting wasn't going well for a reason. 3 months after Nancy started freeloading, I finally caught them cheating. I had been suspicious for a while, but seeing it was true was another thing. One day, when a client meeting was canceled and I was killing time at a cafe, I saw Nancy and Mike walking together outside. They were holding hands and chatting happily. A brother and his sister-in-law holding hands like that just isn't something that happens. In that moment, I was sure they were cheating. Sometime later, once my feelings had settled, I confronted them at home. So, the overtime was a lie, huh? Nancy, you've just been pretending to job hunt while hanging out with Mike. The worst. Even at this age, you can't be satisfied without taking something from me? That's why I kept my marriage to Mike a secret. When I let my emotions burst and poured out my feelings, they easily admitted to the affair. Then they started saying things that were even more infuriating. If I had known such a beautiful woman was my sister-in-law, I wouldn't have believed Sally and avoided you. You're definitely independent, but I've always felt like my pride as a man was being hurt. I want to build a future with Nancy now. So, let's get a divorce. He shoved divorce papers already filled out in his part at me. Fine. At this point, reconciliation is absolutely impossible. Nancy, Mike, from now on, I won't be taking care of you financially, so just be prepared for that. I declared, and Nancy burst into laughter, saying something outrageous. Go get your welfare from TNF, you poor thing. What? What are they even talking about? As I was wondering, a smirking Mike started saying something even more appalling. Yeah, that's right. Since custody usually favors the mother, right? I think it's better for Sally, as the mother, to be with our daughter. The rest is up to you. With those words, the two of them left the house. Some 10 minutes later, Lisa came home and was puzzled by the quietness of the house. So, I honestly told her that we were getting a divorce. Lisa was shocked at first, but seemed to accept the situation somewhat relieved after a while. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. I decided to have a discussion with both of them, accompanied by a lawyer I hired to claim compensation. Shamelessly, Nancy demanded a division of assets. But then, the lawyer burst out laughing. "Isn't TANF for you?" he said. "What?" Taken aback by the sudden turn of events, Nancy was also surprised and exclaimed. Immediately after, Nancy turned pale when she saw the documents the lawyer had placed on the table. "There's no money for a division of assets with this couple," the lawyer said, looking shocked between Mike and me. Of course, Mike was also surprised, being told there was hardly any assets left. Anticipating this, I had taken action as soon as I caught Mike and Nancy cheating. Therefore, the cash we had between us was only $10,000. For a couple that had been married for 18 years, that amount is unbelievably low. "Hey, what's this about? We had lots of savings, didn't we?" Mike, completely clueless about what was happening, asked in panic. Seeing him like that, anger welled up in me. "You really have no interest in Lisa, do you?" "I told you, didn't I? The savings I've accumulated so far were for education, and I was thinking of transferring them to her account. You said, do whatever you want. So, I transferred all my savings to her account. Almost all my savings were for education. You should know that better than anyone. She's managing her money herself, and even paid gift tax, so it's no longer our savings," I said with a cold expression, and Mike's face turned pale as he remembered the conversation. "So, what's the breakdown of the $10,000? "I think about 80% of it is your secret stash." When I said that, Mike looked at me with a face that seemed to ask how I knew. "So, you knew about it, that's why you transferred your savings to Lisa, anticipating the division of assets? You agreed to it. Look, you even signed the consent form yourself." Mike then became angry. "I thought it was strange. Why would you ask for my agreement just for that?" Mike said, ruffling his head, clearly regretting his decision, but since he had signed it himself, there was no turning back now. Even after consulting with a lawyer, it was explained that since Mike had agreed and made the gift to Lisa, the money was no longer considered marital savings. I didn't want such people to get the money I had been saving for Lisa. That's when I thought of making a living donation. Hearing this, Nancy looked stunned but managed to say to Mike, "Hey, you said we had plenty of savings. Weren't we supposed to live a luxurious life? Dividing $10,000 isn't going to amount to much. Why didn't you realize her intentions sooner?" She blamed Mike, but he just looked away and remained silent. He had a small salary and was burdened with a substantial amount of student loans, so for a while after getting married, he hardly contributed to the living expenses. But that was agreed upon. When Mike said it was difficult for him to contribute to the living expenses, I said, "Understood. I'll take care of all the living expenses. So could you focus on saving as much as possible for our future?" So, for over a decade since I took over all the living expenses, I thought Mike had been able to save at least $100,000 or more, but in reality, it was only about $10,000. I had thought saving would be easy since he didn't have to pay for living expenses, but he was splurging behind my back. I found out the savings amount when I saw Mike's banking app and felt betrayed, though I hoped maybe he had saved properly in another account. But that hope was also betrayed, and since I had divorced him, it didn't matter anymore. Nancy, finally understanding the severity of the situation, was in despair, her body trembling slightly. She seemed to be trying hard to think of what to do next, but apparently came up with nothing. Knowing that the cash available for division was only $10,000, I decided to tell Nancy another truth. I turned my gaze towards Mike and said, "I debated whether to say this, but Mike, aren't you planning to quit your job?" Suddenly, Mike, who had been avoiding my gaze, looked at me. Mike, visibly rattled, shifted his eyes left and right before exclaiming, "How do you know I'm planning to quit my job? I had only discussed it with the boss. I thought so after seeing the paycheck." What I pointed out was the fact that no overtime was paid, but I was actually puzzled by another item: the paid leave. Mike, who had quit a job in real estate to work for a construction company, had never taken more than 5 days of paid leave. Yet, recently, his pay slips showed that he had used up his paid leave in a lump sum. Taking a bunch of paid leave at once suggests quitting. Since then, I had been suspicious of their affair and thought maybe Mike planned to quit his job after divorcing me, thinking he would get a substantial amount of assets. That he would actually go through with such an overly optimistic plan made me sigh. "You were my husband at one point. You should know what kind of work I do and how much wealth I've built up. To rely on that for an affair and to choose to quit is really short-sighted." As I said this, Mike's face turned red. The lawyer's mention of TANF to Nancy meant, in essence, that if both of them were unemployed, that's where they'd end up without jobs. Faced with another fact, Nancy was panicked but soon shouted as if she had realized something. "Wait. If you can prepare for Lisa's college tuition and cover living expenses by yourself, there must be something fishy. I got it. You're hiding assets, aren't you? That's it. Come on, confess already." Hearing Nancy's words, Mike also seemed to have a realization. "That's right. Nancy, actually, Sally owns a lot of real estate, so we have to divide that as property." That was close, nearly got trapped. "Real estate is a significant asset, so we need to split it evenly. You've been acting all high and mighty, but you're using underhanded tactics too." As I watched the two of them laughing, the lawyer finally couldn't help but laugh. The moment became tense. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to speak matter-of-factly. "If you're going to talk about property division, you should study more. Mike, as the ex-husband, should know that Sally owns real estate as a business and is making a profit. A corporation and an individual are separate. Her company is her separate property and cannot be divided." Realizing the lawyer was correct, the two of them blushed and froze. The lawyer continued. "Typical assets would include cars, houses, cash, and savings. Furthermore, Mike and Nancy have essentially admitted to the affair. So, Sally can claim compensation from you both. We'll claim $10,000 from Mike and $3,000 from Nancy." Their faces contorted at that. "Isn't that too much? It was just a few months' affair. Right. Normally, it wouldn't cost $10,000, would it?" They started making excuses. But I immediately countered. "Oh, who decided that? Market rates are just that, rates. You took paid leave to date Nancy, and Nancy didn't seriously job hunt but played with my money." The lawyer objectively assessed these facts and came up with this amount. "What, would you have preferred a higher amount?" They quickly shook their heads. The discussion didn't conclude that day and was adjourned. However, I felt a firm sense of progress. 2 weeks later, we set up another meeting. Somehow Nancy had become defiant, saying, "Give me the house and the car. It's part of the property division. I'll give Mike's $10,000 and pay the remaining $1,000, okay?" Her ridiculous claim almost made me yell in anger, but I managed to control myself and calmly assessed the situation. The house still had a mortgage, and I had to maintain it every time something happened. So, it would have some value if sold. Even the car, bought new, is only 5 years old. Both still have value, yet accepting Nancy's argument would only result in my loss. That's the last thing I want. Nancy, did you do the math? If you included the money from selling the house and car, you couldn't possibly say that. Generally, such talks are for those who cheated, like Nancy, not for me to say. How presumptuous can one be? I thought so, but before I could continue, Mike, who was beside Nancy, started saying, "Sally has assets worth $160 million at the company, right? I don't know if you're some real estate mogul or what, but being so greedy even with all those assets is just too much." I was taken aback for a moment, but their words and actions were so absurd that I burst into laughter. Given the situation, my sudden laughter made both of them freeze. After a good laugh, I became serious again. "Is that all you wanted to say? And why are you playing the victim? Greedy? I'd rather be greedy than give money to a man who cheats and abandons his daughter and to the worst sister who steals her brother-in-law. It's better for me to secure as much as possible for Lisa." The two of them flinched. As the lawyer said in our last meeting, if you want to use legal terms, you better study more. What on earth made Nancy think she could say that? I planned to shatter their schemes bit by bit. "Mike, the house is in my name, right? I know that, but we've lived together all this time. So what? I took out a mortgage and bought it before we were married. No matter what you do, it's my property. The car was bought new, has no accidents or violations. If you want to take it, pay me half the appraisal value. That's the rule for property division. I own 2 cars. One is the new car we're discussing, and the other is a used compact car. But the latter would hardly be worth anything." "But the lawyer said, no, cars are part of the property division." Did Nancy just believe that without thinking? That's not what it meant. Look, the lawyer was only talking about the main things that could be part of the property division, not that they will be in this case. The only things we need to divide between us are the $10,000 combining Mike's secret savings and my savings, and the 2 cars. That's all. Nancy knew nothing. Of course, Mike hadn't thought it through either, and this oversight put them back in a pinch. He seemed to ponder for a while but eventually became clueless and pleaded with me. "Please, just give us enough money to start a new life. I beg you." But he didn't seem remorseful. It just seemed like a plea to solve the immediate problem. Such shallow words are worthless to me. I answered with a heart of stone. "It seems like you wouldn't want to pay Lisa's child support anyway, so there's no room for compromise. Why should I worry about your living expenses?" Saying this clearly, the two of them signed the documents, realizing that nothing they said would make me agree. After the divorce and property division were settled, Nancy kept calling me persistently. "Hey, why did Mike have so much debt? You were paying for the living expenses, right? Then what's the point of the debt? What's going on here?" She was screaming on the other side of the phone. I told her the plain facts while holding back a sigh. Isn't it obvious by now? The fact that after over a decade, there was only about $1,000 in savings when it came out. Does having debt while having savings mean you took out a card loan for some big purchase or something? When I asked incredulously, Nancy earnestly explained the situation to the point of drawing back. Yes. He took out a $1,000 loan just to buy some nonsensical branded goods. And then the credit card payments turned out to be a huge mess because it was set to revolving payments without us knowing. This man, he's not just a problem debtor. How dare you push such a person onto me? Weren't you the one who stole him, Nancy? I retorted with a half-smile, and Nancy fell silent. Mike had incurred debts without even me knowing. Now, after the fact, several dunning letters have arrived. He must have hidden them while with me, but became careless after changing addresses. Or perhaps, typical of Mike, he got caught up in his new life and forgot to hide them. Just figure it out yourselves, I said and hung up. Eventually, Mike called, complaining about the high taxes for the car he took and not expecting the vehicle registration renewal fees to be so high, stating the obvious. Maintaining a car costs this much, huh? It's tough, so can't you take it back? I refuse. I curtly declined, and he hung up, seemingly dejected. After that, he reached out through messages asking for help, but I warned. If you keep pestering me like this, I'll report you to the police for stalking. And then he stopped coming altogether. What lies ahead for them is probably a hell much worse than hell itself. Later on, it seems Mike and Nancy got divorced. Their marriage lasted only 3 months after divorcing me. Their plans must have been thrown into disarray the moment it was clear that the single-family home, in my name, was not subject to division. Starting a marriage while burdened with debt and compensation payments was never going to work. Their divorce proceedings were apparently even more contentious than with me. Nancy is someone who clings to money. Sell the new car. It's a waste to keep something like this. It'd be better to cash it in, right? I don't care about that money. Besides, I paid the compensation in full, so if we're divorcing, you need to pay me back. They were stuck in such trivial arguments, unable to divorce for a while. Eventually, they did divorce, but Mike chose to file for bankruptcy. Since the compensation was paid in full and recovered, it didn't affect me. However, he ended up unemployed, devoid of assets, and ultimately fell into homelessness. He couldn't take back quitting his job and left the company. His useless pride prevented him from applying for TANF. Now, he's likely living a miserable life, doing something akin to begging. Divine retribution caught up with Nancy. After stealing my husband and cheating, her 3-month marriage became widely known, and her social relationships collapsed. Naturally, she was disowned by her family and relatives. No company would want to hire someone like her, so her job search continues to be difficult. She might get hired as a part-timer, but with a terrible attitude of blaming others and not herself, she's quickly fired. The lawyer's words that TANF is for you became a reality, and now Nancy is desperately trying to receive TANF. But because she continues to hold on to anything that might be worth money, she hasn't been able to receive TANF and was evicted from her apartment, ending up like Mike. Trampling not only on my feelings but also on Lisa's, such punishment is only natural. Now, it's just the two of us living, but our days haven't changed much. Mike, who never did anything for Lisa yet always complained, telling her to study or go to a good university, is gone, and Lisa says she feels refreshed. And impressively, she was accepted into a national university. Seeing Lisa about to become a college student this fall, I am once again moved. Work keeps me very busy in a good way, and though I'm nearly 46, I'm still in good health. I think to myself that I must keep working harder. Are you trying to poison the family with garbage? I dumped that awful Christmas feast you prepared, all of it. Are you even listening? The Christmas feast! I spilled it all over the floor. I could hear my DIL Kathy's vulgar laughter through the phone. All the food for 30 people, ruined. Just thinking about cleaning up makes me sigh. It sounded like my grandson, Terrence, was there too, laughing loudly with his mother. Go buy some meat, quick! And booze. Kathy chimed in immediately. Snacks and sweets too, buy as much as you can, she demanded. I felt like a servant. My desire for my son Sean's happiness was being exploited. But this incident will change everything. Kathy's reign is over. When asked where I was, I told her the truth. I'm out shopping right now? Eh? What for, you ask? To redo the Christmas feast that was ruined, of course. I didn't need them to tell me what they had done, I already knew. My name is Charlotte. I'm 68 years old. I work part-time at a care facility. Before this, I worked in the restaurant my husband Eric owned. It wasn't very successful, but it was loved by the local community. But that restaurant is gone now. Eric died in a car accident. It's been about 10 years since that painful goodbye. There hasn't been much happiness in my life since then. There's someone making my miserable life even worse. My eldest son Sean's wife, Kathy. They got married 11 years ago. A year before Eric passed, which was probably the peak of my happiness. Kathy is strong-willed and nervous, thinking she's smarter than anyone else. And everything she does is rough. The slamming of doors and cabinets is always so violent. The loud noises intimidate everyone around, making me tense. Honestly, I've felt we didn't click since Kathy came to give her marriage greetings. Sean has his head in the clouds, you know. I'm always there to support him. True, he has always been a bit clumsy. Teased daily by his younger brother and even more by his sister, 2 years his junior. But that also made him incredibly kind and generous, always thinking of the family. If he has chose her. Eric and I agreed to their marriage with that in mind. I've heard that families with strong women do well. Even when she called my beloved son Spacey, I could bear it for his happiness. Kathy is assertive and sharp, sometimes even daring. Each summer and Christmas, when it's time to come home, I'm reminded of this. Regrettably, it's rare for Kathy to visit us with Sean. This year, too, something came up last minute. I'll follow later, she'd say, trying to minimize her time at our home. Sean coming home alone became a Christmas tradition. If she doesn't want to come, she should just say so. I can't help but think that. Creating excuses to act separately each time, it's presumptuous. Even after my grandson Terrence was born, she caused me a lot of distress. Terrence was born at the end of April. Come May. I hadn't heard anything from Sean, and it was too soon for a baby debut party, right? Optimistically, I didn't check. But I later found out from Kathy that they'd already had the party. Huh? Didn't we tell you? Maybe you just forgot about it? She making excuses. I couldn't have forgotten something so important. I always take notes on everything. Kathy's parents came to the debut, and Terrence received gifts. I was completely left out. Feeling deliberately excluded made me irate. For about 11 years, I've been in this pointless feud with mean DIL. Early last year, there was an incident where Kathy did something like never before. It started when Sean said he wanted to quit his job at the insurance agency to open a shop. He couldn't forget the taste of the Christmas feasts and the sight of Dad cooking, secretly aspiring to be a chef. I want to run a small restaurant. I can't give up on my dream. Kathy vehemently opposed it, getting extremely angry and lashing out at him. You decided this on your own. she yelled at him loudly.
You're being ridiculous. How can you not know whether it will make money or not?
I can understand the desire to stop a partner's reckless challenge. Men sometimes want to test themselves with such wild challenges. It was the same when my husband decided to start a restaurant. Initially, I was against it. But unlike her, I never went as far as to call Eric ridiculous. She's really harsh with her words. She says things without considering how the other person might feel. Eventually, Sean, perhaps in defiance of her, quit his job and began preparing to make his dream a reality. Afterwards, Kathy became openly irritated and angry with Sean and me. Half a year had passed since Sean started attending culinary school. Kathy began to directly contact me on my mobile phone. It was always about asking for money. Because his income was gone, life was tough. Sean's selfishness is making our daily budgeting a nightmare. Please help us. I wasn't surprised when she asked for money. It's natural for finances to become tighter in such situations. Eric's restaurant didn't make much money at the beginning either. Moreover, Sean hadn't even opened his own place yet. He was still at the starting phase. Feeling guilty as a mother for his behavior, I wanted to help as much as I could. However, I believed Sean didn't pursue a career in cooking without any thought. I had heard he had saved enough for the culinary school's tuition and living expenses while attending. Moreover, Kathy herself was working part-time at a company I knew. If they were still short on money, perhaps it was just she is poor budgeting? When I hinted at that, she angrily retorted, I'm trying hard, but it's not enough. That's why I'm reluctantly asking for help. She raised her voice as if to say she expected me to understand that immediately. It seems the costs of Terrence's tutoring and extracurricular activities were quite high. If that's the case, it can't be helped. But it's important, so I have to talk to Sean about it too.
Okay. I'll talk to Sean about it too.
You better not. You know how it is, right? If Sean, with his pride hurt, refuses the help, then that's the end of it. Indeed, that could happen. It seems I might have no choice but to comply with her, reluctantly. Thus, a portion of my already modest income became something for Kathy to claim and disappear with. Generally, grandparents find their grandchildren adorable. And a little expense for them doesn't hurt at all. How I wish I could feel that way. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it in me to think of my grandson Terrence as cute at all. In fact, I found him rather detestable, a feeling limited to Terrence. Somehow, Kathy had poisoned him against me. During his visits, Terrence would call me "Hey, oldie" behind Sean's back as a routine.
Hey, oldie, give me some meat. Steak for dinner, got it? No compromises.
No matter how spirited an 11-year-old might be, this kind of language is unacceptable. What does he take me for, his grandmother? There's no sense of respect for the elderly. Each time Terrence spoke to me with disrespect, I caught him to lecture that this was not the way to speak. Courtesy extends to familiar company. You shouldn't call Grandma "Hey, oldie." Bad language will make people dislike you. Do you want to end up with no friends? I even threatened him with such consequences. Yet, Terrence didn't care at all. Shut up, oldie, he'd retort, even more emboldened. Disliked? As if. All the kids in my class do whatever I say. It seems Terrence has quite the influence at school. Moreover, his rough behavior extended to chasing around my cat, Mr. White. Because of this, Mr. White would always disappear whenever Sean's family visited. Terrence's ability to make those around him uncomfortable and his drastic changes in behavior reminded me of Kathy. Like mother, like son. The thought that this was my grandson filled me with despair. In early December this year, a definitive rift formed between me and Kathy. The issue was, yet again, money. When she called out of the blue during the day, I wondered what it could be.
About the monthly money, can you increase it from $500 to $1,000? Why? It's for Terrence, to put him in a better tutorial school. It would be sad if he fell behind his friends, right?
Kathy, I'm sorry, but $1,000 a month is just too much. I could manage the payment, but doing so would leave me unable to sustain myself. Then, Kathy's tone became harsh, calling me a dishonest woman.
Who do you think caused all this? It's your fault, isn't it?
It felt as if a line had been crossed. The rough manner of speaking made that clear. What world does a daughter-in-law who calls her mother-in-law you belong to? Kathy had stopped showing me the minimum respect.
Just borrow the money. You have plenty of relatives. Do that much.
Indeed, as Kathy says, I do have many relatives. My late husband had many siblings, so around 30 people gather at Christmas. But I've never asked my family for money, nor have they asked me. No matter how much she yelled or threatened, I couldn't give her $1,000. I resisted to the end. Then,
fine. Whatever happens, it's not my problem.
The call ended there. All I did was say what was impossible. Why should I be scolded like this? It's beyond unreasonable. I could never have imagined she would do such a thing that Christmas. Christmas went on as usual, with only Sean coming back first. I hadn't interacted with Kathy since that phone call. When I asked Sean, he said Kathy seemed normal. It seems she still hasn't told him about our conversation. So, as usual, she would come to our house a day late. I didn't mind. Just be myself as usual. What else could I do? The incident happened the day after Sean arrived, on the afternoon of December 25th. Sean and I had left the house for individual errands, greeting acquaintances. It appears Kathy had borrowed the house keys from Sean for the visit. Sitting at the bus stop, casually glancing at my phone, I noticed a significant change that couldn't be overlooked. I decided to skip the bus ride home and do some shopping at a supermarket that was open even at year's end. Right after entering the store, Kathy called. She was incredibly high-strung and rudely blurted out without a greeting.
Are you trying to poison the family with garbage? I dumped that awful Christmas feast you prepared, all of it. Are you even listening? The Christmas feast. I spilled it all over the floor.
She said this without a hint of remorse. All the food for 30 people, ruined. Just thinking about cleaning up makes me sigh. It sounded like Terrence was there too, laughing loudly with his mother.
Go buy some meat, quick. Only the finest quality, got it? Understand, oldie.
And booze. Kathy quickly added. Snacks and sweets too, buy as much as you can, she demanded. Perhaps it was the thrill of their prank, but she seemed extremely excited. When asked where I was, I told her the truth.
I'm out shopping right now? Oh, good timing then. Of course, I saw everything you did from the start.
Huh? Kathy seemed confused. Even when I said I had seen everything on my phone, she showed no sign of realization. I told her I'd explain when I got home and hung up. I also explained the situation to Sean over the phone. I wondered what would happen to Kathy and Terrence next. Just thinking about it made my heart ache. The groceries I bought filled 1 eco bag and 2 plastic bags. A considerable amount. The moment I placed the groceries at the entrance, I heard yelling from inside. Sean was raising his voice, something rare. When was the last time I saw him this angry?
Enough. What were you thinking doing something like this?
His voice was so loud it made the glass tremble. Even Kathy turned pale. But her eyes still had a sharp glint. In the middle of the room, scattered with the ruined Christmas feast, she yelled back.
How many times do I have to say it wasn't me? It was already like this when I arrived.
Lies, all lies. She has too many secrets. Defiant, Kathy turned away from Sean with a sulky look.
If you don't want to believe me, that's your problem. Fine, we can just buy it all again, right?
Buy it all again? The same Christmas feast? That's not an option. I decided to enlighten Kathy, who knew nothing.
This Christmas feast was prepared by Sean for our relatives to enjoy.
She was surprised. Yes, Sean had been working on the cooking since early yesterday morning. I had helped with the preparations the day before, supporting him in various ways. After all his effort as a chef, the feast for 30 people was finally ready. I can't even begin to imagine his anger at having it all ruined. Now was the time to tell everything, without holding back. While cleaning up the ruined food, I suggested to Kathy that she should come clean.
What? Secrets? What are you talking about? Like trying to get $1,000 from me every month, for starters?
There's plenty, isn't there? Sean's look became even more severe. It was as if I had poured fuel on the flames of his anger. Kathy fell silent when told to explain in detail. I did the explaining for her.
Since your income stopped, she has been making me give her $500 a month.
Sean seemed quite shocked by this revelation. I'm sorry I kept this from you, I added, feeling remorseful. It was wrong of me to stay silent. I should have been honest with Sean from the start. Agreeing to her demands, thinking I was supporting my son's dream from the shadows, was my initial mistake. Enduring the depletion of my retirement funds when I think about it now seems absurd. Kathy's irrational behavior made it hard for me to make sound judgments.
When she demanded to increase the $500 to $1,000, I refused, saying it was impossible.
If you're short on cash, borrow from relatives, Kathy had said to me. The reason for asking for more assistance was to cover Terrence's tuition costs. The moment I heard that, Sean yelled, "You liar." It turned out Terrence wasn't attending any tutorial or lessons. Kathy was lying to extract money from me.
It doesn't make sense. I had arranged for the living expenses, hadn't I?
There was no need for her to request assistance. Tell me what you spent the money on. Sean's questioning was relentless. Kathy, perhaps realizing she couldn't escape the truth any longer, looked down.
I've been silent, but I have debts. I've been using it to pay them off.
Kathy had been engaging in online gambling without his knowledge. And she had borrowed a significant amount of money from acquaintances due to her addiction. The moment I heard this, I was shocked. To think my money was used for her debt repayment. How infuriating that was. I decided to keep revealing more. Are there more secrets?
Come on, out with them. Like how you've been bad-mouthing me behind my back. Charlotte! Please, stop! Kathy, you and Terrence have been calling me an old hag together, haven't you?
Terrence, who had been sitting in a corner, shrank under Sean's glare. I thought they might deny it, but this time they didn't. Maybe Kathy and Terrence realized their excuses would only make things worse. Good. I decided it was time to make Sean understand the pain I've been feeling.
Especially Terrence, asking for oldie meat or old hag pocket money.
Terrence turned visibly pale. I had no intention of sparing my grandson. No matter how tolerant I am, being called an oldie was infuriating. The frustration and sadness had been making me feel terrible all this time. And now, this debacle. It was not something I could just let go of. Terence, perhaps thinking only of saving himself, exclaimed,
It's Mom's fault. She called Grandma an oldie all the time, so I thought it was okay to do the same. Hey! Terence, be quiet. You don't need to say anything more.
But Terence's betrayal didn't stop there. He seemed to know exactly what his mother had been spending money on. As he was pressed for answers, he started revealing one secret after another.
Mom's been sneaking off to bars. Places with men. Terence, stop it right now. Do you have any idea what you're doing?
Kathy had been going to bars without telling Sean. Moreover, she had been paying him hush money, which amounted to $100 a month. Such behavior was beyond normal. What lengths would this appalling mother-son duo go to exceed my imagination? She visits to the bar were her special treat only on days Sean came home late. Leaving her elementary school-aged son with money and neglecting him to drink and mingle with men at bars. Not the behavior of a sane person. And Terence was no better. When asked how he used his allowance, he made an astonishing confession. He had been using the $100 he received each month to have his classmates do tasks for him. For small fees like $1 or $2, he had them do his homework, clean, and more. The reason Terence could do whatever he wanted at school was due to his excessive allowance.
You think you can treat your school and classmates like that? Shame on you.
Sean's anger, turning his face red, was justified. What parent wouldn't be enraged to learn their child was engaging in such cunning behavior? Terence, scolded by his father, sat down and burst into tears. A pitiful sight indeed. Even the usually assertive Kathy was tearful this time. Despite it being in her best interest to back down, Kathy attempted to defend her position until the very end. She insisted that she and Terence were not responsible for ruining the Christmas feast.
We found it already ruined when we arrived. It must have been that cat that's always around. Please, you have to believe me.
What are you talking about? You called me, remember?
Do you recall the awful things you said? Something about feeding the family garbage, wasn't it? It was just a joke, a small one.
I didn't want to hear excuses. I showed Kathy my mobile phone screen, which displayed a video. The camera captured our current living room from a corner, providing an overview of the entire scene. It recorded Kathy and Terence carelessly knocking down the neatly arranged Christmas feast, laughing rudely throughout the ordeal, with the audio capturing every word. Hearing Kathy and Terence's harsh words, Sean looked up, appalled.
What do you think you're doing with food? And to speak such vile words towards Mom, that's just too much. What? Why? Is this some kind of secret recording? How does this video even exist?
It's a pet surveillance camera. We've installed them all around the house. Every time the eldest son's family visits, our cat, Mr. White, hides away. To keep track of him and what he's doing, I installed these surveillance cameras. I happened to check the footage while I was out, and to my surprise, caught Kathy and Terence in the act. Imagine my shock when I saw them start knocking the dishes over. After that, I immediately headed to the supermarket to buy ingredients so Sean could prepare a new meal. That's when Kathy called me, hurling insults in an excited state.
Sorry, but our Mr. White is too gentle for such mischief. To try and blame a speechless cat for your actions, Kathy, you really are the worst.
Kathy was speechless, looking down. They probably came up with the prank upon finding the house empty. And as they began knocking down a few of the Christmas dishes, they got carried away and ended up ruining everything. To mistreat food just to spite me, their mother-in-law, alongside a child. While tales of difficult daughters-in-law are common, ours seems to be particularly egregious. Possibly ranking among the worst. The shock of the video evidence appeared to have a profound impact. She became notably subdued. She started to apologize, but her excuses were mainly about her own stress, trying to deflect blame. Not wanting to hear it, I instructed her and Terence to clean up the Christmas feast. There was still a bit of time before the relatives arrived. I had purchased as many ingredients as I could. When I indicated it was time to head to the kitchen, Sean nodded deeply and followed. Preparing the food would take a considerable amount of time. There were ingredients that needed days of preparation. Since such elaborate dishes were now impossible, we decided to make quicker meals instead. We can probably make a salad, roast beef, grilled chicken, and perhaps a soup in a short time.
Yeah, I'll also try making some unique dishes with the other ingredients.
I stood in the kitchen alongside Sean. Indeed, Sean's training at culinary school was evident. I was captivated by his efficiency and organization, which reminded me of the nostalgic times cooking with my late husband. Given his desire to open a restaurant, his culinary skills were truly impressive. He created a beautifully colorful marinated dish with bell peppers and seafood. Arranged salads elegantly, topped scallops with roe and lemon, and prepared a sautéed salmon. Any restaurant he decides to open will surely be successful. I'm confident of that. While Sean and I were cooking together, Kathy was cleaning up with Terence. I wonder how she felt watching our well-coordinated efforts. Hopefully, she's feeling ashamed of her actions and is reflecting on her poor behavior. Soon, the relatives started to arrive. My husband's siblings and their families, our second son and his children, and our eldest daughter and her children all gathered. Including us, there were 30 people in total. As usual, it was a slightly noisy but lively Christmas celebration. The relatives quickly noticed the stained seats. Given his desire to open a restaurant, his culinary skills were indeed significant. When asked why, I spilled everything about Kathy's misdeeds. Kathy and Terence ruined it all. Really, what were they thinking? When I showed them the video on my mobile phone, all the relatives sighed together. Everyone looked at Kathy with a look of dismay. I'm so sorry.
Why don't you explain more clearly in front of everyone why you did such a thing?
Well, you hated me so much, didn't you?
That's why you wanted to annoy me, right?
It's okay to say it now.
I'm sorry. Really, I'm truly sorry.
Kathy hung her head, looking uncomfortable. She repeated words of remorse several times after. What a miserable sight. Terence, for his part, was being excluded by the children of the relatives and was on the verge of tears. Children can sometimes be cruel. When it comes to punishing wrongdoers, they show no mercy. During the Christmas party, Kathy and Terence were marginalized. Not even Sean would engage with them. By mid-February, Sean and Kathy divorced. It was revealed that Kathy had been having an affair with her boss. The affair seemed to have lasted for years, with the other man's wife possessing numerous pieces of evidence. The affair was exposed after solid, incontrovertible evidence was gathered through discussions with lawyers. She tried various excuses, saying it was just once or that she was lonely. But Sean didn't listen. He probably thought her words weren't worth hearing. If I were in his place, I would have done the same. There's no reason to engage with someone like that. As a result, Kathy, with Terence in tow, had to start a new life elsewhere. After divorcing Sean, Kathy was sued for a substantial amount in divorce settlements by her affair partner's wife. Once, she called me, asking for help in reconciling with Sean.
Charlotte, please, I beg you. Help me and Terrence. Sean won't even answer my calls anymore. This is too much. Please. You ended up in this situation because of what you did. To say this is too much takes some nerve. Aren't you ashamed?
A rude, shameless woman who cheated has no right to pretend to be a good person now. I cut her off, ended the call, and blocked her number. About a year has passed since the divorce. Kathy still occasionally sends texts or calls Sean. The content is always the same. Regret for her actions and words of wanting to start over. Of course, she also asks for money as well. Typically, she tries to evoke pity by mentioning Terrence.
Please, not for me, but help Terrence. He's completely isolated at school now. He used to be so popular.
Indeed. Terrence was popular. But that popularity was bought with excessive pocket money. Now in debt and broke, Kathy can no longer afford to give him any allowance. It could be said that Terrence's downfall is, in a way, due to Kathy's actions. Sean knows this and has been stern, insisting on reflection and not providing any assistance. Kathy now has 2 jobs. A cleaner and a part-time employee at a grocery store. According to what Sean has told me, it seems she's also doing some sort of piecework, similar to a side job. She has to work relentlessly, sacrificing even her sleep, just to make ends meet. Going forward, Terrence will need even more money. But she doesn't have the means to provide for that. It's possible Terrence might have to drop out and start working. Due to his parents' failure. I wonder how he feels about falling into such a situation. Probably, he'll end up resenting his mother, who caused this. After all, he's inherited Kathy's volatile temperament. In the future, Terrence is likely to become troubled. He might end up ruining his relationship with his mother, those around him, and even his connection to society. Becoming a delinquent, teaming up with similar companions, causing even more trouble for his mother and those close to him. When that happens, Kathy will have to face the reality of her actions. Thinking, what foolish things have I done? If only I had left the Christmas feast alone. Eventually, she may find herself unable to love her wayward son, leading to further family breakdown. Such a painful and lamentable future is easy to imagine. Of course, it's all her doing. 2 years after the divorce, Sean successfully opened his own store. Now, I'm living as one of the employees there, helping my son. Running a restaurant is challenging, where being delicious is just the starting point. What comes next is crucial. To keep the business profitable, utilizing social media, training staff, and developing new customers are essential. Fortunately, he has the motivation and persistence his father left him, along with some recognition. The restaurant that had closed after the owner's death has been revived in his son's hands. Such rumors have sparked interest, and thanks to that, the shop is thriving. We're kept busy every day. I hope to continue increasing sales smoothly and provide peace of mind to my husband in heaven. If he had continued to be married to Kathy, could he have focused on the shop this much? I think not. Her sarcasm and violence would have worn him down. In that sense, perhaps the divorce was for the best. I owe a debt of gratitude to the Christmas feast that was sacrificed that day. As long as my health permits, I plan to support his store. I may not be the poster girl, but I aim to greet each customer with the fullest smile I can muster every day.